obviously prolonged dry summers, prolonged drought conditions will exacerbate the problem, and these kind of incidents will be more frequent and more regular. And something silly like litter is something that we know contributes greatly to forest fires, and we work and talk to our colleagues on the other side who deal with forest fires, and things like glass can have a massive impact, and during these dry conditions can set off forest fires. So I think it's very important to point out that people should be very wary when in forests, in our nature reserve, and make sure they do not leave litter behind, because these can contribute to such events.
And how good are locals and tourists with litter in the Upper Rock generally?
Not very good, I'm afraid to say. There's plenty of bins around. One can argue that you always need more, but we do find an awful lot of litter. We do a lot of cleaning, there's a lot of cleanups, there's daily cleaning of the reserve, but every time we go back and every year when the cleanup is done, there's just ever more litter. So obviously that pride isn't getting through. So we'll be doing a big awareness campaign on the reserve and picking up our litter very shortly.
So your department holds several public awareness raising events every year, and you must get a sense for how accepted or otherwise climate change is in Gibraltar.
I think by and large it's been accepted. People are aware. Definitely the scientific community has accepted this, it's been ratified, and I think within the local population people are now commenting and they're saying, oh, our summers are changing and we seem to be moving to a two-season climate. We're losing spring, we're losing autumn. It's either hot or it's cold. So I think people do realize, and by and large they accept it, and people want to know more because they want to make an effort.
What can they do if they're concerned about climate change?
Personal choices like reducing your carbon footprint, walking more, using the public transport system. If one can afford it, hybrids and electrics. I have an electric motorbike that I bought recently, and it's the best thing I did. But again, that's not something that everybody can do, but it's just being aware. Can you use less petrol? Can you switch off your lights at certain times? Can you try and buy produce that is local as opposed to things that come from further away? There's a lot of information which we have in the department. There's leaflets. Anybody who's interested can ring, and we're happy to give them advice on what to do.
A recent study published in the journal Nature Communications suggests that we're entering a stage now when cyclical natural events will boost human-made climate change, and we'll see summers being even hotter and winters being even colder. So what could you tell us about that?
That is very true. Natural weather patterns will be distorted. So for example, in Gibraltar, one thing that we've seen is that we have less rainfall but more storm events and much more flash flooding. So that's something that we're seeing here.
And that, I suppose, poses a lot of challenges to infrastructure.
Absolutely. Over the last 5 years, we obviously monitor the storms, the amount of infrastructure works that we've had to do to fix storm damage on our coastline. Camp Bay and Little Bay are a classic example. They get battered by storms every single year for the past few years. I think we had 5 or 6 storms between January and March last year. And all of that, as you say, affects a lot of infrastructure, and there's a lot of money that has to go into it to then be able to mitigate.